The shovel hit something hard 3 feet down, and Iris froze. The metallic clang echoed through the empty greenhouse. She'd been digging to fix the irrigation system, another expense she couldn't afford, but the soil had given way to reveal a concrete edge. Not a pipe, not a rock, something deliberately buried. Her phone buzzed. The landlord, final notice. $1,847 by Friday, or locks change Monday. Iris looked at her bank account. $83.12. She looked at the hole in the ground. Then she kept digging. 2 weeks earlier, the lawyer's office smelled like fake lemon and old carpet. Iris sat between her half-brother Marcus and his wife Vanessa, both of them checking their phones while Mr. Pemberton read their aunt's will. To Marcus Webb, I leave my home at 156 Clearwater Drive and its contents. To Vanessa Webb, I leave my Tiffany collection and my mother's china. To Iris Webb, Iris straightened. She'd barely known Aunt Caroline, had visited maybe 3 times as a child. The greenhouse had been the only interesting part, a massive glass structure behind the house where Caroline had grown orchids and talked to her plants like they were people. I leave the greenhouse property at 1840 Riverside Road, including the structure and all land within the fence perimeter. Marcus snorted. The greenhouse? That place is falling apart. It's a separate lot, Mr. Pemberton said, deeded independently from the main residence. Approximately 1 acre. 1 acre of weeds and broken glass, Vanessa said. She turned to Iris with practiced sympathy. I'm sorry, hon. That's basically a teardown. The property taxes alone are current through the year. Mr. Pemberton interrupted. Ms. Webb maintained the account until her death. Iris said nothing. She'd learned silence was safer than argument. Marcus had gotten everything when their father died. The furniture, the savings, the good memories. Iris had gotten a box of old photos and a lecture about being irresponsible. Never mind that she'd been 19, grieving, and trying to finish community college while working at a call center. That was 7 years ago. Now she was 26, a single mother to 4-year-old Lily, and working 3 jobs that still didn't cover rent in their studio apartment. Data entry from midnight to 4 a.m. Morning shift at Murphy's coffee shop. Afternoon warehouse inventory on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Can I see it? Iris asked. The greenhouse. Marcus laughed. Knock yourself out. Maybe you can sell the glass for scrap. Mr. Pemberton handed her a key ring. The property is yours, Ms. Webb. Do with it as you see fit. Iris drove out the next Sunday, Lily strapped in her car seat, clutching the stuffed rabbit that was missing 1 ear. The greenhouse sat behind a chain-link fence, barely visible through overgrown honeysuckle and wild roses. The glass panels were clouded with age, some cracked, some missing entirely. The frame listed slightly to one side. But it was huge, maybe 60 feet long, 30 feet wide, with an arched roof that caught the afternoon sun. Iris unlocked the gate and pushed through the tangle of vines. Inside, the greenhouse was a jungle. Plants had gone wild, tomatoes climbing toward broken skylights, perch spreading across the floor, something that might have been orchids strangling themselves on abandoned shelves. It's a forest, Mama. Lily ran ahead, laughing. Iris walked slowly through the space. The irrigation system was shot, exposed pipes, rust stains, puddles where rainwater leaked through the roof. The heating system was ancient, probably hadn't worked in years. The soil beds were overgrown, but underneath, she could see the bones of something beautiful. Professional-grade growing tables, commercial planting beds, a potting station with marble countertops. Her phone buzzed. The coffee shop manager. Can you cover Bethany's shift tomorrow? 5 a.m. start. Iris calculated. That meant finishing data entry at 4, driving across town, working until 2 p.m., picking up Lily from daycare, then warehouse shift at 6. Possible if. She didn't sleep. Yes, she texted back. She found Aunt Caroline's journal in the potting shed, a small structure attached to the main greenhouse. The pages were water-stained but readable. March 1985. Installed the underground beds today. Tom says I'm crazy, spending money on something that might not work. But truffles need specific conditions. Limestone, controlled moisture, the right tree roots. If this works, it'll be revolutionary. Iris flipped forward. Page after page of notes. Temperatures. Soil composition. Fungal growth patterns. And then, November 1987. First harvest. For pounds of Perigord black truffles. Value. $3,200. Tom's not laughing anymore. Truffles. Aunt Caroline had been growing truffles. Iris looked around the greenhouse with new eyes. The overgrown plants, the wild growth. What if some of it was intentional? What if the underground beds were still active? She called Marcus that night after Lily was asleep. "You want to what?" he said. "Iris, truffles? In Virginia? That's insane. Even if Aunt Caroline was growing them 30 years ago, they're long dead. The greenhouse is worthless. Cut your losses." "I'm just saying, look, I'm offering you a favor. I'll buy the property from you. $5,000. That's more than fair for a teardown." Iris thought about $5,000. 3 months' rent. Lily's asthma medication without having to choose between name brand and generic. A buffer, however small. "Let me think about it," she said. "Don't think too long. Property taxes come due in 6 months. Can you afford that?" He hung up before she could answer. Iris opened her laptop and searched Truffle Cultivation, Virginia. The results made her head spin. Black truffles selling for $800 per pound. White truffles at $3,000. Small farms producing 20, 30, 40 pounds per season. But cultivation took expertise, climate control, specific soil conditions, and 7 years minimum from planting to first harvest. Unless the beds were already established, already producing. Iris looked at Aunt Caroline's journal. The last entry was dated 3 months before her death. Still going. Still beautiful. Never give up on what grows in the dark. The eviction notice arrived on Thursday. Iris stood in the greenhouse at 5 a.m., a headlamp strapped to her forehead. The eviction notice crumpled in her pocket. She'd called in sick to the coffee shop, the first time in 2 years. Lily was at her friend Jasmine's place, the only favor Iris had felt safe asking for. She needed to know if she was chasing madness or salvation. The journal showed diagrams, underground beds positioned beneath specific trees. Oak, hazelnut, beech. Iris had cleared enough overgrowth yesterday to identify 3 oaks, still standing, their roots spreading beneath the greenhouse floor. She'd bought a shovel at the hardware store. $23.47. Money she didn't have. Now she chose a spot according to Caroline's notes, 6 feet from the largest oak, near where the irrigation pipe emerged from the soil. She pushed the shovel in. The ground was softer than expected, loamy and dark. 1 foot down. 2 feet. She was breathing hard, sweat soaking through her shirt despite the morning cold. 3 feet. The shovel hit something solid. Iris knelt and scraped soil away with her hands. Concrete. A rectangular edge. She dug wider, exposing a seam. Her fingers found a metal handle, rusted but intact. She pulled. The concrete panel lifted, revealing a cavity beneath. The smell hit her first. Earthy, pungent, almost overwhelming. She pointed her headlamp down. The underground bed was thriving. Tree roots spread across the ceiling of the chamber, and nestled in the specially mixed soil below were dozens of dark, lumpy shapes. Truffles. Iris reached down with shaking hands and lifted one. It was heavy, rough-textured, about the size of a tennis ball. She pulled out her phone and compared it to the images she'd studied all night. Perigord black truffle. Tuber melanosporum. She counted the visible truffles. 12, 15, 20. And this was just one bed. Caroline's journal showed 6. If you're following Iris's story, subscribe now, because what happens next will change everything. Iris called the number she'd found at 2 a.m., a restaurant supply company in D.C. that specialized in rare ingredients. Summit Provisions, this is Rachel. "Hi. I have truffles. Black truffles. Fresh. I need to know if you buy them. Where are you located?" "Virginia. About 2 hours from you." Pause. "We purchase from certified suppliers. Do you have harvest documentation? Cultivation records?" "My aunt grew them. I inherited the property. I have her journals, records going back to 1985. Can you bring samples?" "Today." Iris looked at her car, a 2004 Honda with a check engine light that had been on for 8 months. She looked at the truffles, carefully wrapped in a damp towel. She thought about the eviction notice, about Lily's stuffed rabbit with 1 ear, about 7 years of exhaustion that had carved permanent shadows under her eyes. "I'll be there by noon." The drive took her through morning traffic, the Honda wheezing up hills. She'd left the truffles in a cooler filled with ice. 3 pounds total from the first bed. She hadn't touched the others yet, was terrified she'd damaged something, that this would evaporate like every other hope she'd ever held. Summit Provisions occupied a warehouse in an industrial district. Rachel met her at the door, 40-something, sharp-eyed, wearing chef's whites. "Let me see them." Iris opened the cooler. Rachel bent close, inhaling. She picked up the largest truffle, examining it under the fluorescent lights. Then she pulled out a knife and made a small cut, exposing the marbled interior. "Jesus," she whispered. "These are perfect. Absolutely perfect." She looked up. "You said your aunt cultivated these?" "In Virginia? For 30 years. Maybe longer. She died 4 months ago. I just found the beds." "How many beds?" "6. I've only harvested from one." Rachel pulled out her phone and made a call. "Chef, you need to come down here. Now." The chef was a tall man with graying temples and hands that moved like instruments. He examined the truffles in silence, then looked at Iris. "I'll give you $2,400 per pound. Cash. Today. 4. Everything you can harvest this season." Iris's knees went weak. "That's 3 pounds is $7,200, Rachel said. "And if the other beds are producing at the same quality, you're looking at potentially 30, 40 pounds this season alone. Maybe more." The chef leaned against the counter. "Your aunt was a legend. I heard rumors years ago about a truffle operation in Virginia, but she never sold commercially. Kept it private. The quality here, this is Perigord at European standards. You have any idea how rare that is in the US?" Iris thought about Marcus's offer. $5,000 for the whole property. $5,000 for what might be producing $500,000 per year. "I need to make a call," she said. She walked outside and dialed Marcus. He answered on the 3rd ring, annoyed. "Iris, I'm in a meeting. The property's not for sale." "What? We talked about this." "5,000 is generous. I'm keeping it. Tell Vanessa thanks for the sympathy, but I'm good." She hung up and blocked his number. Inside, the chef had his checkbook out. "I'll need regular deliveries. Can you commit to weekly harvests?" Iris thought about the eviction notice. About Lily's daycare bill, overdue by 3 weeks. About the call center job that had automated her position last month, cutting her income by 1/3. "Yes," she said. "I can commit." The check was made out for $7,200. Iris stared at it until the numbers blurred. More money than she'd ever held at once. More money than 3 months of brutal work had ever earned her. "There's one more thing," Rachel said. "You'll need to scale up. If you're serious about this, you need climate control, proper harvesting equipment, maybe staff." "That greenhouse is fixable," Iris said. "I can fix it." She drove home with the check in her purse and stopped at the bank. The teller counted out cash, enough to cover the eviction, Lily's daycare, the car registration she'd been delaying. Enough to breathe. That night, Lily asleep beside her in their tiny apartment. Iris read through Caroline's journals. The notes were meticulous. Soil amendments, temperature ranges, harvest schedules, and on the last page, a note in shaky handwriting. "Iris, if you're reading this, you found them. Good. Marcus would have paved it over for a parking lot. But you've got that stubborn thing I recognized when you were 7 years old and spent 2 hours trying to save a dying orchid. Some things are worth the work. Some things grow best in the dark, with patience and attention nobody else wants to give. This is yours now. Make it beautiful." Iris closed the journal and looked at the eviction notice, now meaningless. At the check stub. At her daughter, sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks without the weight of her mother's panic filling the room. Tomorrow she'd quit the warehouse job. Next week, the data entry. The coffee shop could wait. She liked Rita, her manager, and the work wasn't soul-crushing. But the greenhouse, that was hers now. That was the future growing underground, patient and persistent, waiting for someone to recognize its value. 6 months later, Iris stood in the renovated greenhouse and watched the installation crew finish the climate control system. New glass panels caught the morning sun. The irrigation system hummed efficiently. Raised beds bloomed with herbs and specialty vegetables. Her cover crop, as she called it, the visible business that explained her income to curious neighbors. But underground, in the carefully maintained beds, the real treasure grew. "Ms. Webb," the crew chief approached with a tablet. "That's the last of it. Temperature controls are set to your specifications. Humidity sensors are calibrated. You're good to go." Iris signed the invoice, $34,000 for the renovation. Money that had flowed from truffle harvest delivered weekly to Summit Provisions, to 3 other high-end restaurants, and to a specialty distributor in New York who'd offered her a contract worth $180,000 for the year. Her phone buzzed. "Rachel, chef wants to know if you can do 20 pounds for the New Year's Eve menu. Premium pricing, $3,200 per pound." Iris calculated. The beds were producing beautifully, 43 pounds harvested so far, with peak season just beginning. 20 pounds was doable. Yes. Delivery December 30th. She walked through the greenhouse, running her hand along the smooth tables. Lily's daycare was paid through next year. Their new apartment, a real 2-bedroom with a yard, had a lease Iris had signed without panic. The Honda was replaced with a reliable Subaru, and tucked in a savings account was enough money to cover 3 years of expenses, a buffer against the chaos that had defined her entire adult life. But the moment that mattered most had come 3 weeks ago, when Marcus showed up unannounced. He'd stood at the greenhouse entrance in his expensive suit, staring at the renovations, at the professional equipment, at the small tasteful sign, Wet Heritage Farm, Specialty Cultivation. "You're actually making money from this," he'd said, disbelief sharp in his voice. "Yes." "How much?" Iris had smiled. "Enough." "That's..." "Iris, I offered you 5,000. You said the property was worthless. If I'd known, you'd have what? Demolished it? Turned it into rental units." She'd met his eyes. Aunt Caroline knew exactly what she was doing. She left the house to you because that's what you value. Appearances. Status. She left this to me because she knew I'd see what was actually valuable. Marcus had turned red. "This is insane. You can't just..." "There has to be some legal recourse." The will was unclear about the truffle operation. The will was clear about the property and all its contents. My lawyer confirmed it. "Would you like his number?" He'd left without another word. Iris had blocked his email too. Now, standing in the greenhouse she'd built from broken glass and inherited knowledge, Iris heard Lily's voice from outside. "Mama, Ms. Rachel is here." Rachel appeared in the doorway, followed by a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Iris, this is Dr. Sarah Chun. She studies truffle cultivation for the agricultural extension. I told her about your operation and she wanted to meet you." Dr. Chin extended her hand. "Ms. Webb, Rachel tells me you're producing 40+ pounds per season from established beds. That's extraordinary. Most American operations struggle to hit 20 pounds even after a decade of cultivation." "My aunt did the hard work," Iris said. "I'm just maintaining what she built. I'd love to study your methods. With your permission, of course." And Dr. Chin hesitated. "I run a program teaching sustainable agriculture to women transitioning out of difficult circumstances. Single mothers, women recovering from financial crisis. I wondered if you'd consider hosting a workshop, showing them what's possible." Iris thought about herself 6 months ago, exhausted, terrified, working 3 jobs that barely kept them fed. She thought about the eviction notice, about the shame of Marcus's pity, about the invisible exhaustion of poverty that ground women down until they couldn't. Imagine anything different. "Yes," she said. "I'll do it." The workshop happened on a Saturday in early spring. 12 women, ranging from early 20s to late 50s, gathered in the greenhouse. Iris showed them the beds, the cultivation techniques, the careful record-keeping Caroline had maintained. She showed them her business plan, her contracts, the reality of building something sustainable. "The truffles took 7 years to establish," Iris said. "My aunt planted these beds when I was a baby. But there are other paths. Specialty herbs, microgreens, heirloom vegetables. The greenhouse isn't about truffles. It's about recognizing value where other people see waste. It's about patience. And it's about not letting anyone tell you what's possible." A young woman in the back, maybe 23, holding a toddler, raised her hand. "How did you afford the renovations?" "The first harvest paid for the eviction notice and basic bills. The second paid for repairs. The third paid for climate control. I scaled slowly. I kept the coffee shop job until I had 6 months of savings. I didn't quit everything at once. I built gradually." Another woman. "What if we don't have an inheritance? What if we're starting from nothing?" Iris met her eyes. "I started from an eviction notice and $83. The inheritance was broken glass and dirt. What mattered was recognizing potential, learning everything I could, working with what I had instead of grieving what I didn't." After the workshop, the young woman with the toddler approached. I'm Jasmine. I clean houses. I've been thinking about starting a plant business, succulents, easy stuff people can keep alive. But everyone says it's stupid, that I should focus on getting a real job. Iris pulled out a business card, professional, cream-colored, printed last month. Email me. I'll show you my startup spreadsheets. Connect you with the supply company I use. You're not stupid. You're seeing an opportunity. That's different. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. That night, Lily already asleep in her new bedroom, Iris stood in the greenhouse alone. The climate control hummed softly. Moonlight filtered through clean glass panels. Underground, the truffle beds thrived in their carefully maintained darkness. Her phone showed messages from 3 of the workshop participants. Questions about business licenses. Request for supplier contacts. Hope, transmitted digitally, spreading like roots. Iris pulled out Caroline's journal. She kept it in the potting shed now, protected in a glass case. She read the last entry again. Make it beautiful. She thought about beauty. Not the Pinterest version, not the Instagram aesthetic, but the real thing. Soil under fingernails, early morning harvests, the satisfaction of building something that lasted. The ability to tell your daughter that hard things end. That patient work pays off. That being dismissed doesn't mean being worthless. Her lawyer had called yesterday about Marcus. He was threatening a lawsuit, claiming the truffle operation constituted a separate business that should be divided among heirs. He has no case, the lawyer had said. The property and all its contents are yours. But he's loud and he's angry. Let him be angry, Iris had said. I have work to do. She locked the greenhouse and walked back to the apartment. Hers, paid through next year, with space for Lily to play and walls thick enough that Iris couldn't hear her neighbors fighting. The Subaru sat in the driveway, reliable and safe. Inside, the refrigerator was full. The bills were paid. The future was funded. But more than that, more than money, more than security, Iris had something she'd never imagined possible 6 months ago. She had proof that she'd been right. That the quiet, stubborn instinct to hold on to the greenhouse, to dig deeper, to trust Caroline's legacy, that instinct had been worth following. Marcus had the house, the furniture, the visible inheritance. But Iris had the greenhouse, the truffles, the knowledge, the ability to recognize value growing in the dark, overlooked by everyone who measured worth in square footage and status symbols. She kissed Lily's forehead and sat at her desk, a real desk, in a room with a door. She opened her laptop and pulled up the business plan. Year 2 projections. Expansion possibilities. The workshop program she wanted to formalize. Some things grew best in darkness, Caroline had written. With patience and attention nobody else wanted to give. Iris smiled and started typing. She had inherited more than land. She'd inherited the knowledge that being overlooked was different from being worthless. That value took time to recognize. That women who worked in the dark, patient and persistent, could build empires from broken glass and dirt. The greenhouse lights glowed warm against the night sky. Underground, the truffles grew. And Iris, exhausted, dismissed, supposedly worthless Iris, had finally stopped working herself to death and started building something beautiful.